Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Fired Up. My name is Morgan McClintock, and today I'm joined by the whole gang. So it's very exciting. And that is Nicole Pytel.
Hey, Morgan. Hey, everybody.
Ian Lipner.
Hello.
And Chris Ulbrich.
Hey, good to be here.
So today we're going to answer some client and listener questions that are in the mailbag. And these are PR and content marketing and a whole range of different questions. We get these a lot. We figured if we're hearing them, you're probably thinking them. So we'll dive in. And Ian, I want to start with market research. It's the beginning of the year. Lots of companies are trying to get their sort of state of research survey done so they can sort of fuel their marketing and PR programs. And one of the very first questions is, how many people should we survey for our report to be credible with the media?
Yeah, that's a question we get a lot. The answer is the ever popular PR answer. It depends. But yeah, let's talk about that. So if you're asking a group of respondents questions that are pretty mainstream and any person on the street can answer, you're going to want to get 500 responses in most cases. Less than that, you're going to start to get questions, but not always. In general, you're going to want to try to provide some insights into that data. And if you start kind of cutting it up a little bit, and let's say you're talking about industries or you're talking about job roles, then you're going to be getting down to a narrower and narrower amount of people in order to draw conclusions from. And the media may be rightly concerned about that, right? Now, sometimes you have the ability to target that kind of narrow audience from the beginning. So let's say you have a really good way to reach maybe only 250 people who are, let's say, cloud security specialists, right? A hard to target audience that most journalists in that area would be happy to get results from 250 at a time. So again, it depends. But if you're doing a survey that's intended to kind of suss out national versus regional trends or things that will require you to kind of cut that data up more, the more that you can provide, the better, basically. There are limits to that. For example, let's say you decide, I'd like to get 20,000 respondents and I have the money for that. We can do that. There may not be 20,000 respondents out there that are easy to find if you're looking for a certain kind of respondent, or it may take quite some time to get to that. Like the survey samples will literally say, hey, it's going to take us 3 weeks if you want that many people. And if we're doing PR related research, we want it to be newsworthy and fresh. And so again, it depends on how you're going to use that data, right? So if it's 5 weeks old by the time you're talking about something that's about breaking news this week, it might not be useful. If you're talking about a longer term kind of point of view trend in an industry, it could be quite sufficient.
So I think for B2B, we're saying in general, try and get to that 500 mark. That gives you some great pivots. But as Ian had said, if you need to do deeper dives, you're going to need to get a higher number there, and that could be capped and gets more expensive. Nicole, one of the things we saw, and we always see seasonality over the holidays, is that the conversion rates on landing pages go down, right? People are on holiday. They're just not clicking in and filling in the forms as much. And you expect that to lift up in January. And to an extent, we're seeing that, but maybe not universally across the board. So one question is, why is my landing page not converting?
To take a page from Ian's playbook, it depends. There's lots of reasons. The first thing that I like to do is look at the building blocks. Are we targeting the right audience? If we're advertising, who are we targeting? Is that who is actually interested in this? What does the landing page look like? What does the copy look like? Is the headline very compelling? Do I have to scroll and scroll to get to a form? There's all kinds of best practices that we follow that we look for. And sometimes a simple copy change can make a world of difference. It really can. We had a client that the landing page just wasn't converting very well. I think it was about 4%. We don't like to see that. Changed up the copy. We hit 12% almost instantly. So everything is kind of an experiment with marketing, even when you know all of those best practices. So always look at those fundamentals. And then there's a couple of other reasons. Some audiences are just very hard to reach, or more specifically, some audiences are particularly skeptical. They don't want to hand over their contact information to a brand they've never heard of. As great as your information may be, if you're this unknown entity, there's a chance that people are just going to be like, I don't know who this is. I don't know if they know anything. I don't want them to have my email address and start emailing me who knows what. And so never mind. And we're seeing that more and more. And we've been seeing for a while that people are getting more discriminating about where they actually hand over their contact information. And we are seeing for the brands with little to no awareness, it is getting tougher. And I know it's tough when you've got a limited budget to say, hey, we need to spend money on awareness, but you need to spend money on awareness. So check the building blocks and then look at your brand awareness and go from there.
When it comes to landing pages, I think a lot of marketers have got in their mind, I'm going to do conversion rate optimization and we're going to change the headline from blue to red and see if that will change the button color. In B2B, with the volumes you're talking about, and you're trying and convert on an ebook or an asset, it's really not going to make the difference, right? You're not spinning up hundreds of different A/B tests of colors and headlines. Use best practice to tweak the messaging, but you've got to be flowing from your ad. Are we targeting the right audience? Are people clicking on the ad? The right people coming to the landing page? What are they doing on the landing page? Sure, you can heat map them a bit if you want. Tweak the message there and then go down. If that's still not working, it could be the asset. It could be the fact, as Nicole said, you need to invest in brand. And I think one of the big themes for 2025 is brand is back, and you definitely got to put the investment there. It's very tempting to invest, hey, as a startup, I just got to make it to the next quarter. And that means we need to fill the funnel and just get down to the lead gen. But if you invest in your brand, that's going to accelerate that process. And there's a great example there. So, Chris, we just had this question actually, and I think it's quite common. Like, we have an announcement to make. We have some news. Maybe it's a product announcement. Maybe it's the survey announcement. Do I need to issue a press release for this or not?
In general, we do recommend issuing a press release for the announcement of a major work of research. That, to us, would typically fall into the category of a corporate announcement, a product announcement, research that is that is a sort of tentpole of your campaign, clears the bar for a press release. A question that we get asked quite a lot in connection with press releases on research and others is what newswire to use. There are a lot of considerations that go into issuing a press release or not issuing a press release. That some are truly on the margins. I think that is almost worth a show in itself. But on the subject of the newswire, it's a particularly tricky one, I think, because for those who are not familiar with the way newswires work, typically when you put a press release on a commercial wire, the wire will offer a number of what it calls distributions, or sometimes it will refer to them as wires. So it's a little confusing because there are individual wires offered on the newswire. And these individual wires are typically, most of them are regional. So you'll see a national wire, you'll see a West Coast wire, a Southern States wire, and then there will be specialty wires like the healthcare wire, the tech specialty wire, and so forth. And to make things even more confusing, some newswires will have multiple wires that sound similar, like you'll have the technology specialty newswire and then the tech centers newswire. You think, what's the difference? I will confess, I went through a good, many years of my career not knowing and just blindly picking the wire that sounded most appropriate. If I were to advise someone right now, and I am, I would say pick the cheapest wire that you possibly can, where you still get full service from the newswire. It's not a DIY option where you do all the HTML formatting yourself. that's usually, in my view, not worth it unless you're doing like one press release a year and you have plenty of time to lead up to it. So you want that editorial, that support from the editorial department, the proofreading. So I think that's worth paying more for. But the difference between the cheaper wires and the most expensive wires, it's major. And the cost difference is major. And the end result for you is practically invisible, because for the most part, when you're using a newswire, what you really care about is getting posted with Business Wire, Globe Newswire, PR Newswire, what have you, is having your release up on that site, which triggers news alerts, and it provides a home, a very official looking home for your press release for forever and anon, right? You get that no matter what wire you choose. It's easy to dial in on, I have a release that is really important, and so I want to put it on the national wire. It's a big piece of corporate news for us. What a national wire does really is it sends your release to a bunch of assignment editors, or at least the addresses of those assignment editors at places like AP and Bloomberg. And we have this idea, I mean, I certainly did getting into the business, that in every newsroom, there's someone just like watching a telex
kind
or
of
something.
terminal. Yeah, a terminal with a feed of news.
With a feed, exactly. And someone's like, yeah, you hear the like the banging of the teletype, and someone rips a page off and says, "Lenny, get a load of this." In reality, I mean, of course, everything's digital now, and what they're doing is they're just sending an email. I mean, it can be a little more complicated than that. Sometimes they have links into the AP terminal or the Bloomberg terminal, whatnot. But ultimately, your press release is appearing in the queue on some editor's screen, which could just be like an inbox that they're not paying attention to. If you're the kind of company that gets Bloomberg's attention when it's like, oh my gosh, like Intel just announced earnings or something like that, then you already know it. But for most companies, for most startups, the extra cost of a national distribution, in my opinion, is not worth it. And you can save hundreds of dollars by picking a more limited regional distribution. The wire service we use has something called Tech Centers, which hits the reporters in San Francisco and New York and, I don't know, maybe Durham, but certainly the Bay Area, Austin, places like that. But I will tell you, in all my years of doing PR, I've never had a reputable reporter reach out based on getting a press release emailed to them. The distribution is probably the least important thing, or the least important factor in putting out a wire release. And in my view, you shouldn't pay hundreds of dollars extra for it.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially for startups. There are public companies, for example, have reasons to use those services so that they can, in a turnkey way, basically comply with a lot of regulations at once for notifying the market at the same time of something. And same thing goes for things related to when there's problems with data security, data privacy, things like that. It is an efficient way to ensure that you have a record of reaching out to all of the affected areas. Sometimes I found that even in data privacy notification scenarios, we had to take ads out with local newspapers because we had no other way of making sure that was going to be reaching everybody in that very affected area. Those kinds of compliance things are pretty much not on the table for very many startups. But it's just something to keep in mind that you don't have to do it that way. You can have your PR firm take a very excellent record of reaching out to all those folks and making sure that they were notified. But that's a much more work-intensive process. And in those cases, things like newswire services and some other services for mass notification are useful.
That's right. And I would add one more note on this for cost-saving purposes. So I mentioned that there are often two different newswires, especially in the technology world. You have technology newswire and you have tech centers. Typically with a newswire, in addition to picking your main distribution, your main regional distribution, you're allowed to select 5 trade publication distributions or so, usually 5. And those are included with the main wire distribution. Now, those distributions, that email I mentioned earlier gets sent then to the list of reporters who have signed up from specialty publications to be informed. I still don't think you get much out of that. But insofar as you get anything out of a distribution, you're much more likely to get it from the specialized trades than you are from the regional distribution, because I don't think many tech reporters are watching the San Antonio newswire or the Durham newswire. They're looking at technology. One of the little secrets of this industry is that these expensive specialty newswires are often just the national newswire with the tech trades pre-selected. And so if all you care about, which you, in my view, you should, is the trade distribution, you can choose a cheaper regional distribution and just select those particular trade distributions yourself, get the exact same value for hundreds of dollars less.
I just want to echo the point about, like, you're not getting media coverage from a reporter based on the press releases. But doesn't matter where you're posting from, it's on the internet. And so it's searchable and findable. And that's why you're able to accomplish all these goals.
And most agencies, us included, have a relationship with a particular wire. We get a discount. Some of the agencies keep that discount. We just pass it on. So to the point about using the cheapest one, use your agency's one that they recommend and get the discount. All right. Oh, look. The world is on fire about DeepSeek, Ian, and we all should start using it in our marketing campaigns. Am I right?
Yeah, you got to look up which TikTok dance you should do on DeepSeek, and then just empty your social security number just right into the nearest box and send it along. Yeah, I think it's a big data security issue. We've already established the habit of using a trusted service, or services that are underwritten by companies that we trust. And they're like, oh, here's just another one. And it's available on the App Store. So let's go ahead and start playing with it. I think it's probably a bad idea for companies to upload any information in there that they might see as proprietary at this point. Nothing wrong with playing and poking with a new toy and seeing what it's about. You don't want to remain ignorant of it, but I would just say approach with caution. There's a lot of options out there that have been vetted better. In 6 weeks, we might feel different. We might see that it's been reviewed and, a lot of folks are vetting it for the market. But, the early indications are that there's information in there that isn't necessarily accepted as fact on an international level. And if you're drawing conclusions from a source of knowledge that you're not certain where it's gotten its information, or giving it information from your company or anything in your IP, you might be taking on extraordinary risk.
I totally agree. I think if you thought the TikTok conversation was a big deal, this is an even bigger deal, and it's going to continue to be an even bigger deal, because really, what sensitive business information are you uploading to TikTok? Probably not very much. What could you be loading into an LLM? A whole lot. I do find it interesting. I hear that the privacy policy disappeared for a little while when people were trying to dig into it. I have seen kind of recaps of what's in it. There's a lot in it of what it collects, and it's all stored in China. So be very, very cautious with this. I think this is one instance where our excitement to try out that shiny new object is really putting information and data at risk. DeepSeek has become the top downloaded app in the Apple Store, and that's frightening because all of that data is going straight to China, and who knows what they're doing with it. Be aware of what's going on in the AI world. Be aware of the tools. Be aware of the good things that AI can do. Also be aware of the not so great things that AI could do, and protect your business.
I think you can get a self-hosted version of this.
You can. Not on your phone, though. Yeah.
Not on your phone. So I think the advice here is don't upload anything sensitive to it, and perhaps tell your team, you can experiment with it, but nothing confidential should go into that. And, make sure you're adhering to your own AI policy. And people are welcome to copy ours, which is in the footer of our website, because you've got to have a policy. You've got to make sure everybody adheres to that. I think from a marketing perspective, that's the critical thing. Nicole, another question. We just talked about conversion rates, but another obvious question is, how do I track my leads down the funnel after they've converted?
I wish I had started getting $1 every time I was asked this question because I could have retired already. It's a huge question. It's a very important question. You figure your company is handing over this big budget for marketing and they want to know, what are you doing? Is it working? What's the progress? What's going on? And the answer is very difficult. There are attribution platforms that you can get that will give you this information. Your CRM can give you a lot of this information. A good lead scoring model can help kind of drill down on the leads that you want to talk to most and kind of show you, hey, what are they doing? What are they engaging with? If you want to just double down on the persona that you most want to talk to, that's a good way to do it. But it doesn't take into account the entire dark funnel. If I just see something on social media and that influences me, there's no record of that. If there's a word of mouth referral, there's no record of that you can track. So it's very difficult to do. I would say get the information that you can, use your CRM to the fullest. If you want to invest in an attribution platform, go ahead and do that. Realize there's going to be blind spots and then do everything that you can on your end to guide people down the funnel. Use your email nurtures, get a monthly newsletter going. Those kinds of things give leads a little bit of help. And those things are also trackable. You can see, hey, who clicked on a link in our newsletter, or we sent out this e-blast. How many people clicked on that? That'll give you some idea of engagement and it keeps you top of mind with people. So do what you can, understand that there are blind spots and just be proactive about trying to guide them yourself.
It is a lot harder than you would think because, say, you're normally using HubSpot on the marketing side and the sales team might be using Salesforce. And are you tracking this deal status under the deal status? Are you tracking it by the account lifecycle stage, the contact lifecycle stage? All of these things need to be aligned and synchronized back and forth. Sometimes people are more diligent in updating them than others. Sometimes there are automations which will update a contact's lifecycle stage if they take a particular action, and that will throw off your reporting. So, most of us are inheriting something that others have created before, and there are lots of workflows and automations in there. So it sounds simple. Oh, we just move, they go from a lead and then they become an MQL, SQL, sales accepted lead, whatever your stages are, right? Op closed. But it ends up being more complex than you think. So I think the headline here is understand that it's going to take some time. You're going to train the team, and there's some marketing ops effort involved here, probably more than you think, and certainly more than any of us would like.
I would add to that, a lot of startups don't really get together on the marketing and sales side to say, what is an MQL? What are we all calling an SQL? Marketing may have a very good idea of what MQLs and SQLs are, and sales may have a totally different idea of what an SQL looks like, which makes the attribution even harder to track because we're using two different measuring sticks. So one of the first things you need to do is bring everybody into the room, have a conversation and say, okay, what makes a marketing qualified lead and what are we all agreeing makes a sales qualified lead? That alone can help solve some problems, but it's a very tricky problem and one that sounds easy and it's not easy.
Yeah, case in point, when we developed our lead scoring model, a lead goes to an MQL, goes to an SQL. Our definition typically is a lead is somebody who's filled out a contact form. When they've taken a sufficient action, they become an MQL. Marketing has qualified this lead to hand over to sales. And then an SQL, sales has taken it and had a call and accepted it and then marked it as, hey, we've qualified this as a sales qualified lead. Now, HubSpot has not helped with this because their definition is different. And they say you go from a lead. Once marketing likes this lead and decides to work on it, they're an MQL. And an SQL is the point at which they hand it over to sales. So it goes to sales and SQL. And then sales have to take an extra step, becomes a sales accepted lead at that point. So even just that basic flow is muddy. And we have to remember each company that we work with has slightly different definitions. So when we're scoring and when we're just sort of tracking So even within the basic definitions of what is an SQL and an MQL, you'll find there's not alignment on that. And I was surprised that HubSpot had it different to what I think most people would be using within their organization. So, naughty HubSpot. All right. Another question that we often get, Chris, is can I review the reporter's article before it published? We've worked with them. This is maybe an exclusive. It's really important to us. We just want to take a quick look at it before it comes out. Can we do that?
The short answer is no. This is one of the conversations you often have with clients, especially when they're just getting started with PR, because it seems totally reasonable. If you're a layperson working with the media, you think, surely the reporter wants to get this right. So why wouldn't they show me exactly what they're going to write so that I have a chance to input and correct any missteps I think they've made? And in a sense, that is reasonable. The problem in practice, as neophyte reporters quickly learn, is that if you give a source that opportunity, you give them an inch, they will take a mile. And it is, in practice, if you're the subject of a story, you're never fully satisfied with the way you are described in the story. You always want something to be different. And a reporter of any merit at a publication of any quality, most publications have a policy that copy review is not a thing because they need to maintain their independence from their sources. And again, especially if you're a marketing person coming to PR first time, this seems counterintuitive because you're coming from your discipline is one where you have complete control over the message and the final product. And giving up that control to a reporter feels unnatural because you're used to working with copywriters who are performing on spec and it's easy to apply that same thinking to your relationship with the reporter, I think because that's all you know. Working with the media does involve a certain amount of a relinquishment of control. The implicit deal that you are making when you embark on a PR program is that you're going to give up some control in exchange for the honest, objective point of view or treatment from a publication that has this imprimatur of quality. And independence is actually fundamental to the perception of quality. In the moment, that can be hard to absorb. But the truth is, in the big picture, if a publication was giving everybody copy review, they would cease to be independent and they would cease to be valuable as a PR outlet. They would just be another marketing channel.
I would like to kind of jump in on one or 2 points. One is the idea of offering to check quotes, right? Direct quotes, like making that offer is something that a PR team can do. We're not often taken up on that offer, but it's a way to indicate that you're listening carefully to the way that they're quoting you. I would say 90% of the time that there's a concern and there's a desire to change something, it's because our client doesn't think they said that. They think, I never said that, or they're paraphrasing me in a way that isn't accurate, right? And so we are in the position often as PR people to be like, I think I remember that. So I don't want to go against what my client's saying because that's not what they meant to say. So in order to get ahead of that, we have the benefit now of it's very easy for us to record a lot of our conversations on Zoom. Many reporters will decide to record on their own, which actually creates an assurance for everyone, I think. And when they don't, we often offer to do that and even to provide a copy of the transcript or the recording to the reporter so that everybody's on the same page about what was said. But everything else Chris is saying about like the meat of that story, their perspective, like how they perceive that quote, how, the context they put it in, that's not something that we should be asking to change.
So related then, I can't see it before. for the reasons we've just talked about. What can I ask a reporter to change once the article has published, if anything?
The rule of thumb is that material factual error is correctable. And in fact, I know as a former reporter myself that as a reporter, you live in fear of the factual error. You can live with all sorts of other shortcomings in your copy, but getting a name misspelled or getting a number wrong, or worst of all, like misunderstanding a statistic in a fundamental factual way, like you represent the statistic, or like you mix up a customer and a competitor. You say that this startup you're covering competes with a company when in fact that company is a customer. That is the kind of error that reporters and the publications that employ them will typically correct without any argument, and they will usually do it fast because it's embarrassing for them. Most reporters, despite the bad rep that they've been getting in a lot of quarters over the last several years, in my experience, most reporters are ferociously dedicated to facts and getting the objective truth of the matter down. Where this overlaps with the previous question is the sort of the gray area where one person's fact is another's interpretation. I've had clients who read an article and they're furious because the reporter has described their target market differently than the company itself would, or they describe the product in not quite the same words that the company itself would. And to their mind, that's a factual error. But the hard truth is that to the reporter, that is a matter of interpretation. And if there's a disagreement on that sort of thing, a reporter will generally say, look, this isn't your place to tell me what to write. In general, that sort of gray area, even that kind of gray area issue is just not correctable. What you can be sure is correctable are the facts. Everything else, probably not.
Right. And so if you are going to make a correction, we can go back once with here are the 2 or 3 things that we think are wrong. You can't keep going back. You can't go back to change the sort of opinions. And I think our general advice here is just think about the long-term relationship with this reporter, because it's annoying to have to go back in and change it. And as Chris said, sort of almost embarrassing. You can irreparably harm your relationship with a reporter with the go backs. If there's multiple of them, if you're really sort of insistent, there are lots of stories where people have tried to get whole articles taken down, and that's really a no-go. And they're just literally burning the relationship with that whole publication. So even large organizations fall into this trap. Understand also, I think, just the framework of this is one article in multiple articles that are going to paint the picture of your brand and your proposition over its lifetime. And so just try and have some sort of context to it, and that will help with any little nits and differences in interpretation that you might have, and take the win.
That's right. We all know from hard experience, it is difficult to have that perspective at 5 a.m. when the story comes out, especially if you're the marketing person, your CEO isn't even awake yet. You're living in fear of what they're going to say when they wake up and see it. And often it's not as bad as you think, or it's not bad at all. You just don't know because they're not even online yet. And that uncertainty makes you crazy. This is one of the reasons that we try to set those expectations with, at a startup, it is typically the CEO who is the spokesperson. We try to set those expectations in a prep call with the CEO so that there are no surprises on the day.
This might be the first time you've really worked with a high-level reporter, and you don't know. And so there's some learning involved in that. And so we certainly try and guide people through that. But you can correct the facts. You can't correct the opinions, I think is the answer to that question. All right. Nicole, Chris, Ian, thanks for your time answering that. Hopefully that was useful for you all. If you like this, please do follow us or drop us a note. We would love that. And of course, if you have questions that you'd like answered, please send them in. We're always happy to help. And with that, we will see you all again next week.